Hey, so welcome everyone. I'm so happy you're here. We have a big crowd. My name is Isabella Massardo and I work as content strategist at GALA. And this is the very first session of the Academy Q2 2026 on AI-powered marketing, sales, and growth. It's a very good program with lots of content. So be prepared, have your coffee, your tea, or whatever makes you focus. Um, I just have a few things to say and then I'll go backstage. So first thing is the link that you use for today's session is the same link that you're going to use for the second and third session. So be sure that you copy that into your calendar. You should also have received an invitation to join our Basecamp group. If you haven't, please reach out to me at content@gala-global.org and I'll fix it for you. It's useful to join the Basecamp group because you can ask questions. We're going to post resources there. So I suggest that you do join. I know that sometimes company policies don't allow you to join third-party platforms. In that case, please let me know and I'll make sure that you receive the links to the recordings and the other resources that we're going to share there. We're not using note-taking, AI-based note-taking apps, so please switch them off. And because we want all the content to be shared among people, but not reused, not, republished or whatever, especially when people are sharing maybe some information that is
Hello.
company related. Hello, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I think that's all from me. I'm going to be backstage. If you have technical issues, you can send me a message in the chat and I'll help you troubleshoot. But for now, I'm going to hand the floor to Libor, Lemise, and Eric. And enjoy the session.
Excellent. Thanks, Isa, for the introduction. So hello and welcome everybody again. I'm genuinely excited that you are all here, and I really hope that you will find this course useful. As Isa mentioned, this is the first session of a three-part series. So we put it together specifically for marketing and sales professionals in the language industry. And our pitch is simple. No hype, no nonsense, no AI evangelism, as they call it. Just the practical stuff that actually works for us and might work for you as well. And the things to be careful about. So let's get into it. As you know, I'm not doing this alone. I will run today's session on marketing. Alamis will take sales next Tuesday, and Eric will wrap it up in 2 weeks' time, talking about using AI for growth, including how to use AI for expanding your current customers. The three of us have spent like 10, I think, preparatory calls over the past 10 weeks putting this together. So what you'll get across here is hopefully consistent, but of course coming from three different perspectives. Maybe Alimis, Eric, would you like to introduce yourselves quickly for anybody who doesn't know you yet before we proceed?
Absolutely. Thank you, Libor. My name is Lemise Graney. I am formerly in sales enablement, came into sales. Truly, you might have seen my introduction on Basecamp because of a love for words. Very
Yes.
honored to be presenting with Libor and Eric. And I'll be keeping an eye on chat too. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in there and I'll flag them throughout the session, as will Eric.
Great. And my name is Eric Vogt. I am, as many of you might know me, I'm a solutions guy in a systems thinker. So I am looking at this holistically in a broad cross-disciplinary way, but I'll be focusing on signals. So you'll see a theme here with all of our sessions here about how AI is related to this concept of signals. But with that, I'll turn it back to Libor to get us kicked off on this one.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Eric. So let's look at the agenda we have today. Right, so we have 6 modules today, so roughly about 65 minutes of content plus Q&A. So we start with the fundamentals, the principles that don't change just because AI has showed up. And we'll keep coming back to these. Then we'll talk about marketing in the language industry in 2026, which means the shifts, the buyer journey, and where the real opportunities exist. Then I will cover AI content marketing, which means how we can build content operations which compound, which means not just producing more AI content, AI stop as they call it, but only faster, but something which is more durable and more unique to all of us. Then we talk about AEO, which means answer engine optimization, which means getting cited when buyers ask AI and not Google. And I think this is the module where most LSPs are still underestimating things. So hopefully we'll cover some new ground here. Then we'll talk about AI prospecting agents, so hype versus reality. And finally, we'll cover the tech stack and the skills to operate it. So I think we'll pause after each module for any urgent questions, and then we have reserved 10 minutes or more at the end for a proper Q&A. Yeah, let's get started. So the fundamentals first. I want to start here because I think it's the part that gets skipped most often. Because everybody wants to jump straight to the tools, the prompts, the agents, and that's understandable. And I'm actually the same, so I can totally relate. But the organizations that are getting real leverage from AI already know who they are, who they sell to, and what they stand for. So before we touch any single tool, let's talk about what AI cannot replace and probably also shouldn't. This may be just my feeling, but I suspect that many of us here feel the same. So we have all of been sort of thrown into AI. Everything is moving so super fast. There is no map, and we have to take it all in our stride. I'm borrowing here, of course, from the German philosopher Heidegger, who used the word Geworfenheit, thrownness. That is the condition of being placed into a world we didn't choose and have to figure out as you go. So if he was alive today, I think he might have called it AI Geworfenheit or maybe AI first design, who knows. But so what does this thrownness actually feel like? So I think these are the three things from me and probably for you too. Number eins, it's feeling constantly behind. Even people who are actively learning every day often feel like they are sprinting just to stay in place. I mean, the speed is really nauseating, as they say. Then there is the public theater. So, LinkedIn, YouTube, conference stages, everywhere you look, everyone looks like they have it figured out. So AI works beautifully for them. They make the rest of us feel a little bit stupid just for asking basic questions. So we often stop asking. And finally, I think it's the existential one. So many of us have spent years, sometimes even decades, getting good at our professions. And now AI seems to imitate that craft well enough. So we just wonder where our actual leverage is. So none of these, of course, are great feelings. But if you're experiencing them, rest assured, you are probably and absolutely not alone. This may be, I think, the most common feeling in the industry right now, regardless of what the apparent LinkedIn confidence or feed might suggest. And here is, I think, what this looks like. So the general impression that everyone else is so far ahead, so much smarter, so much more sorted than us. Partly exciting, partly frightening. So this is the image for me of what AI Geworfenheit looks like. All right, before we get any further, let's see where you sit. So let's use the poll feature to vote. So if you were asked to describe your current relationship with AI, I mean, would it be cautious, experimenting, active, but with some workflows deployed, embedded? So you should be presenting today, and of course, in that case, I'm more than happy to pass the mic to you. Or do you feel mostly overwhelmed? I just pause here for a few seconds to see where the room lands.
Let's give it some 30 seconds.
Yeah, sounds good. I will also vote now.
Okay. Almost there.
I mean, there are no right or wrong answers, but just the sentiment we all have.
Okay, a few more people, come on. You don't have, of course, but it would be nice if you could vote. Okay, we're at 90%. Come on, the last few. All right, I'm gonna close at the count of 3. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and here are the results. Can you see them, Libor?
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect Gauss curve, right? So everybody is somewhere in the middle, and of course, there are the extreme cases at the end. So yeah, that's great. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Cool,
excellent.
perfect. So I think this is the right place and the right content then. Okay, so however you feel about, I think the AI, the reassuring thing is that, at least for me, is that what makes us valuable as marketeers is not on the table. So here, I think the 5 qualities that are all ours or yours. I think number 1 is brain and judgment. So anyone in our industry knows how confidently AI can produce nonsense. The same is in marketing. So LLMs, they'll give you something that sounds so plausible, and your job is really to know when it isn't. The next thing is good taste here. So we all know what feels right. You all know what great looks like, and that's not a small thing because that's an amazing advantage we all have. I mean, the next advantage is knowing our customers. So AI doesn't know basically why they buy from us and not from the other guy, and what generally keeps them awake at night. So AI doesn't know it, we do. And then it's industry knowledge, so the hands-on, learn by doing kind. So from talking with peers, going to events like GALA Board Ready, getting a project wrong and figuring out why. So this is the really intelligence, not artificial. And finally, it's human nature. So we still market and sell to humans, not agents, fortunately. So marketing, if it's a science, I would say it's a social science. So definitely knowing people and what makes them tick is the great asset. I think the point I want to make on this slide is that AI is brilliant support for almost anything in marketing. It's an extra set of brains, an extra set of hands. The specialist we always wanted to hire, but we never could. But it cannot fix any bad fundamentals. So if you don't know, who you are, who you serve, or what makes you genuinely different, AI will just amplify the confusion. So it's faster, more scalable, but it doesn't really work out. So that's the message I think on this slide. And I think I've been a little bit hard on AI in the past few minutes, but let me rebalance it. So I think the fact is that marketing in the language industry has never been glamorous. So we're not like fashion. We don't have Coca-Cola budgets. Marketing teams in our space have worked with limited resources forever. I think it means smaller teams, smaller budgets, smaller media presence than the categories we normally sell into. So marketing has always been more about brains than budgets, I believe. And AI is the extra force that lets us finally break free from some of these constraints we have faced for the past 20, 30 years. We can now do better work at higher quality and at scale that we could do like a year ago. And that's, I think, generally exciting. So in my perspective, AI is a godsend for any marketing team in our industry. So just have to make the fundamentals right. So let's get more practical. What can AI actually do for those of us in marketing or selling language services and technology in 2026? First, a quick fact about the actual sales cycle. It's not unique to our industry. I think this is true across most of B2B. Buyers today have unlimited access to information. They do their own research. They talk to peers. They form opinions long before they ever talk to a vendor. People often call it the the dark funnel. I don't know how dark it is, but definitely it's very long. The second fact is that at any given moment, most companies are not in the market, maybe 5 to 10% on any given day. So the other 90% aren't actively evaluating. So there is really no point in selling to them until something changes. Leadership change, a missed launch, a board decision, a new hire. And these triggers can be internal or external, but they do happen and they can create a window for us. So I think marketing has like two jobs in this sense. Be visible during the long, invisible research phase, and then detect the trigger moment when it happens, and then follow up fast. So I think that's the heart of signal-based marketing, which we will come back to in module, I think, 5. So by the time the RFP arrives, the strategic conversation is already over. You either column A or column B, I mean the real contender, or you column C or D, the dreaded RFI, RFP fodder, as they call it. So the moment to actually influence things is early, in stages 1 and 2, and that's marketing's job. Now let's look at the typical programs that drive marketing sourced pipeline. So by marketing sourced, I mean opportunities that are created primarily through marketing as opposed to direct sales effort. I think in practice, attribution is rarely clean. Almost every opportunity is influenced more or less by marketing somewhere, even if sales brought it and closed it. And honestly, the multi-touch attribution efforts are usually a waste of time. Track the dominant contributor. No need to over-engineer attribution. That at least is my experience. So we have inbound, meaning online discovery, content, SEO, social PR, live presence, all of these things. Then outbound, which means prospecting and outreach, events, the ones you attend or host, and finally referrals or word of mouth. Each channel has a different ROI and a different win rate. I think that's experience for all of us. So referral opportunities have usually the highest win rates. Events are often next. Inbound sits somewhere in the middle, and outbound might have the lowest win rate because you're often entering the sales cycle late, as we just discussed. But it doesn't mean that outbound doesn't have any value. You compete in deals you wouldn't otherwise even know about, which is always useful. And even if you lose, you've warmed an account or contact for next time. So it's not a cold lead in the future. So where does AI help the most? Not really so much in referrals or events, because these are still deeply human, but certainly it can help with inbound and outbound. So that's where we'll focus. Maybe before we do a quick poll again, if you look at your pipeline, if you manage your pipeline this year, which program contributes the most? Is it inbound, outbound, events, referrals? It can be by the number of opportunities or their value, however you measure it. Let's again see where the room lands.
Okay, we're 70%. Come on.
That's good enough for me.
Really? Oh, come on. At least 85%. Come on.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to close at the count of 3. So 1, 2, and 3. And here we are.
Yeah,
so it's placing bound.
Yeah, evenly spread. Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't know, Lemis, Eric, how does it chime with your experience? Do you see the same?
If I was going to guess, I would have guessed to this group referrals would have been the primary channel that I thought would have been the dominant one. But that having been said, it's really interesting getting back to that idea of where the best advertising dollars are spent. It's that old adage that 1% is only 1% of your spend actually converts, but you don't know which 1%. So you have to do it all. But I think this is also an indicator that the AI potential might vary depending on how you answer to these, right? Because the impact is different depending on the different channels. What do you think, Lamise?
Well, I know I accidentally clicked outbound when in my entire time in localization, I have not had, that's a lie. I've had one successful outbound outreach. So whoever is clicking outbound, please schedule time with me before the 12th because I want to know your secrets. But yes, I think inbound being the larger chunk of the pie makes sense. Events and referrals, I would have expected to be heavy hitters as well. So I was surprised by the outbound, but again, I know my vote is skewing the number a little bit.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks. We'll see next week. Let me see, sales session, the secrets. Okay, cool. So I think there is an important distinction I'd like to make, and that's the difference between AI use and AI deployment. I think AI use is people prompting tools to get results. Drafting an email with ChatGPT or asking Claude to summarize a document, which of course is useful, but ad hoc. And the output usually depends on whoever happens to be typing. AI deployment is taking AI and embedding it into our workflows that then run reliably at scale and with or without anyone watching. So it's a different beast entirely. I mean, this table on the slide shows what each looks like across 7 functions. And you see that I think most teams sit on the left side, the AI use. I think the opportunity really is on the right, the AI deployment. I think the gap between these 2 columns is where the real competitive advantage is right now. Of course, nobody jumps straight from zero to deployment. It's a journey, and we all start somewhere, but the direction matters. So today we'll go deep on the top 3 rows, building an AI-based content operation, using AI for prospecting, and finally improving the whole process around them. So let's start with the content, which I think is probably the most frequent use of AI in any marketing team, which means drafting, summarizing, ideation, the obvious stuff. I think one of the biggest challenges with AI content is something we'll see everywhere. So it sounds very generic, specific enough that you recognize what it means, what it wants to say, but generic enough that you forget who said it. And as a result, it doesn't work too well. I think the model I found most useful is 70-30, which means use AI for roughly 70% of the heavy lifting, that is ideation, drafts, variations across channels, structure research. That part is genuinely faster with AI. The remaining 30% is human. Your insight, taste, perspective, the stuff that makes the output sound like you and not everyone or anybody else. That 30% is really where the differentiation lives. I think 2 things are critical here. So it's closing the loop. So feeding human edits back so the system actually runs. This is the part most teams forget. And then it's a brand guideline, so guardrails, because what is technically correct can still be emotionally wrong. You need explicit rules for voice, values, and quality. I'm exaggerating here probably a little bit to make a point, but probably not by much. I think the era of writing one-line prompts and expecting brilliance is over. More accurately, it never really started. The people getting outstanding output from AI are not the ones with the most clever prompts. I think they are the ones giving the model the most context, their voice, their audience, their proof, their constraints. A great prompt without context produces an average post. A merely good prompt with rich context produces something which already sounds a bit more like you. And this is why simple prompts don't cut through anymore. Because the models are mostly trained on the same data. So if you all give them a prompt like this, everyone in the world gets the variation of the same post. Yeah. Same hooks, same cadence, same vaguely confident tone. And let's also be honest, we've all become very good at spotting AI slop by now. Three sentences in, and we we know we scroll past. So if your output sounds like everyone else's, you're not winning attention. So I think the way out is custom intelligence, your data, your perspective, your voice, which brings us to the next slide. I think this is the clearest way to see the evolution of using AI for content. I think stage one, prompts. One-off conversations. You explain context every time. Quality depends entirely on whoever's typing. The output is ad hoc and hard to repeat. I think this is the era, not so long ago, when everyone was supposed to become a prompt engineer. We don't hear that phrase so much anymore, and there's a reason. Stage two, it's skills, which means repeatable workflows. The skill reads files, follows rules, saves output in a consistent format. So it means single responsibility, which is auditable. The output is consistent on its own, regardless of who triggers it. And the stage three, it's systems. So skills that are chained together, multiple skills which work in sequence to produce content that's consistent, scalable, and can be improved over time. Less AI slop, and its output which compounds. So how does a real AI content ops system actually look? For me, it's these four layers, and they only really work if they talk to each other. The foundation layer is the truth about your business, who you are, who you sell to, what you stand for. This is what every AI workflow should reach for first. The research layer is what gathers fresh material on demand, which means themes, proof points, what competitors are doing, citations. This is where AI can really shine. The execution layer is where the actual deliverables get drafted, which means all the posts, briefs, email scripts, the visible output. And the feedback layer is the one most people skip, and it's the one I think that makes the whole thing actually compound. So, that's what worked, what didn't, what the QA caught, and what to never say again. And this goes back into the foundation, and the system gets sharper every cycle. I think without the fourth layer, the feedback, you don't have a system. You have more like a faster prompt, but combined. This is, I think, the most beautiful, virtuous circle. I think in practice, the foundation layer can be just four markdown files in a folder. That's it. You can of course use GitHub or similar, but you don't need to. All you need is the markdown files that any LLM can read. I think audience, that's who your ICP really is. Not demographics, but their vocabulary. Not yours, but theirs. Their pains, any anti-triggers, what they share, the trusted voices they listen to. This goes much deeper than a typical buyer persona, so it's a really richer information about the target audience. Voice, it's not adjectives like professional and friendly. It's more like patterns. So hooks you can actually use, sentence written, the phrases that are genuinely yours, and the phrases you would never say. So in this case, I think it pays off to show and not tell. So because the model needs to see it to match it. The third thing is positioning. So here you feed what you own, what you are trying to own, in the marketing space, what competitors claim, where you genuinely are different, and being honest about what's still contested. And finally, it's the journey. So where buyers actually store. So their objections, the decision moments, the things that move them, their typical buyer journey. And I think the trick here is situational loading. So don't stuff everything into every prompt. heavier skills pull only the file or section they need for the job at hand. I think here is a small but probably important point. Even the greatest AI system, you still need two types of content, and they serve very different purposes. The coverage content is the commodity stuff. That's the what is X, the FAQs, the basic how-tos, the product information. It's predictable, and it's fine that it is. AI will handle this brilliantly. The goal here is really just to be discoverable, to show up in a broad search and AI queries. It also has a role to play in terms of AEO, which we will tackle later. And the differentiation in content is the opposite. So that's the non-commodity. So this is where you show your expertise, share real case studies, talk about what you actually do differently, the war stories, as they call them, the personal perspective. AI, of course, can help you draft this, but it cannot replace the expertise behind it. I think the mistake I see very often is that people produce only coverage content because it's easy with AI, and they forget that nobody chooses you because you have an FAQ page. I think they choose you because of the differentiation content, and we really need both types. All right, let's make it practical. So what can I actually do? I think before this session, I shared the handout which summarizes all these playbook slides, so you don't have to read it word by word. But basically, tomorrow, what you can do is spin up a foundation folder. So it doesn't need to be perfect, just start. For instance, take your last 10 published pieces as coverage or differentiation, and you'll see your mix instantly. And take one task your team prompts ad hoc and just write it down. That helps. Next week, turn that task into a skill, with inputs, rules, and the output template. And block like 30 minutes for weekly content review. And write your do not say list. And back it into your voice MD markdown file. Next month, you build the full 4-layer setup, but only, let's say, for one content stream. Do not do it for everything that's happening. Sit down with your sharpest SME for an hour and pull their expertise out into something the system can use. And do a monthly review. What worked, what moved, what buyers are now asking. That's a playbook at a glance. Demis, Eric, anything to add from your perspective?
Yeah, I've been nodding here with you, even though I already knew what you were going to say. But I think that there's different ways of thinking about the what's actually happening. So let's take the word AI out of it and just think of it in terms of either a transformation or it's a automation. We can also think of it potentially as a distillation. So maybe there's 3 different categories. Now, one of the big things that strikes me about this is that we always have this concept of garbage in, garbage out, right? I mean, we're well aware of that as professionals. We talk about it all the time. But now we're looking at it through a different lens. We're looking at it through the operational lens of how we market, how we sell, how we function as an organization. And as we start with the marketing story here, we find that we're easily able to do all of these things really quickly. For example, we can easily ask AI to generate a set of content that represents like what a certain business should be able to do, and it wouldn't really be distinctive. You also could be leveraging from a lot of other bad signals, which is another story. But the work that's required to understand yourself leads me to almost think of this as entering the Oracle of Delphi and thinking like, know thyself. Like, you need to know who you are. What are your strengths? What are you able to do well? What do you want to be able to do well? And then forcing yourself to think through this process as you just distill down and automate and enhance transform the content that you're using with AI. All of this is led by the signal of who you are as a company or who you are as a system. So I think that if I could pull out one kind of kernel, one almost a mythological level of importance. It's knowing who you are and just using this. The playbook is really a journey to trying to discover exactly how to implement this, and then you know what good looks like. Then you know what the AI is intended to, the output is supposed to be. It's so easy to say just use this tool. The tool can very quickly deliver amazing looking stuff. But this, we're talking about the layers and the detailed prompts and the structure that you're looking for. That's what delivers the meaningful value. Anyway, hopefully I didn't get too metaphysical about that, but I think that's kind of the level that we're looking at. Lomis, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, Eric, what you're touching on is a little bit in a traditional paper writing process, which is where my mind goes, is the brainstorming, understanding what you're trying to do, thinking through how you're going to get there, mapping out solutions that will work, crossing them off, really narrowing in on what you want to do. And then the end of the process, I think, is just as important, which is the revision. So the hardest task for a writer is to revise your work, to cut things out. And that's where that monthly review really stood out to me, as you have to constantly tweak. These aren't systems that you build and they run in perpetuity and they run effectively. Not only is the market changing, not only are your buyers changing, but the model themselves are changing regularly. So I think that for me, what stood out is the necessity of revision.
Perfect. Thanks, Denise. That makes perfect sense to me. Perfect. All right. So the next module, that's AEO, or answer engine optimization, which means getting cited when buyers ask AI and no more Google. Before I say anything more, let's just try this live. Open Perplexity or ChatGPT or Cloud on your phone or laptop, and type something like best translation companies for medical devices in Europe, whatever your actual specialization is. And let's give it like 30 seconds, and let's see if your company shows up. I mean, don't worry, this is not a public shaming exercise. It's always quite brutal. But notice what happens. Are you in the answer? Are your competitors who's getting cited as the source? I think this is the new reality of how buyers find you or don't. So feel free to share your experience or results in the chat window. Right, thanks, Isa. So you tried it for the best industry association, and GALA came up. Yeah, perfect. That's put on.
First place.
Yes, we're the best. Anyway, so this is, I think, good exercise for everybody. And so where are we? So for 20 plus years, SEO meant getting to page 1 on Google. Even page 2 was still useful. Buyers could scroll, click around, compare a few options. That doesn't happen anymore inside AI tools. Perplexity gives you one synthesized answer. ChatGPT might give you a list of maybe 5. Nobody asks for more options. So if your company isn't in the synthesized answer, you simply don't exist at the moment of intent. And that's the shift. It's not about ranking higher or lower. It's about being absent from the conversation entirely. I would say if you are spending more and more of your time in AI tools and searching there, chances are your buyers are too. Optimizing for AEO means optimizing for how you personally search too. I think SEO, of course, is still super important and still drives the highest volume of traffic, but things are changing pretty fast. So let's walk through a real example. I sat with Claude the other day and pretended to be an enterprise buyer looking for a translation provider. And I loved it, by the way. To be honest, it was a great experience. The first prompt was deliberately broad, just best recession companies. And what came back was already a structured response, three rough tiers, large global LSPs, medical and life sciences specialists, and other notable options. Notice what the model did. So it assumed I might be looking for different kinds of providers. It hatched. And then in the usual LLM fashion, it asked for a follow-up question to narrow it down. So I think this is the moment of truth. If you are in this initial list, you stay in the conversation. If you're not, the buyer never sees you again. I mean, there's no page two as in Google. So then I picked, I think, Europe with a medical device angle. The model immediately got more specific, MDR, IVDR, regional buckets, UK versus Europe. Then I asked about enterprise providers, about 10 companies, brief descriptions, plus a section called a few things worth weighing at this size. And here's the interesting part. The model started behaving like a procurement consultant, not a search engine. It started anticipating my real needs. And I think this is what buyers experience now, not a list of links, but more like a guided conversation that gets sharper every turn. Next, I asked about pricing. The model gave me like 4 pricing model types, a comparison table, and 7 specific things to negotiate. It even suggested how to run an RFP process. The model effectively ran a procurement strategy session for free in 2 minutes. And if you ever build RFP responses, you know how much value used to sit in being the trusted advisor early on. That value is now being delivered instantly by an LLM. And whoever the LLM cites becomes the trusted advisor by association. So here's what the buyer ends up after about 10 minutes of conversation. They have a long list. They have a short list. They have a buying framework. They have an evaluation matrix. They have an internal brief. And they have an RFP package, including the emails they can send to selected vendors. So in 10 minutes, no vendor calls, no analyst reports, no demos. This is why I keep coming back to this point. By the time you see the RFP, the strategic conversation is over. Either we are in the AI's answer or we aren't. So it's harsh, but certainly true. So what would have got you onto this buyer's long list? I asked Claude to reverse engineer its specific recommendations, and there were these 6 in this particular scenario. So being findable. So you have to rank for the specific terms with a dedicated page, not buried in generic content. Then it's being certified. So of course, in this medical device case, the right ISO is visible on the homepage with numbers and dates. Missing certifications disqualify you instantly in regulated industries. Then it's named clients. So some real case studies with specifics, not a generic logo wall that everyone has. Then it's regulatory specificity, which means citing the actual regulations by name and number, MDR 2017, whatever, not just we do medical. Coverage stated plainly. So all EU languages listed, not 100 plus languages claims. And industry presence, which means speaking at the right events, having white papers on the side, analyst recognition. So none of these, of course, are new, but what's new is that the AI scoring is scoring this really consistent. You can't avoid it. You are either in or out, or in the bracket, or you're in different bracket. Okay, so I think here are 6 moves to actually earn citations. So I'll go through this quickly. Try to be the cited source, which means write content the model wants to cite. Content that is authoritative, specific, structured. Don't try to be too smart for the models. I think citation broadly is the new SEO friendly, if I may say so. Then own your entity. Make sure that your brand description is consistent across the web, which means Wikipedia, if there's a Wikipedia page about you, LinkedIn, directories. Models build an enriched graph from these. Then I would say answer the real question. So map what your ICP is actually asking AI assistants and write direct expert answers in the language they use, not yours. Then it's build topical authority, which means interlink the clusters on narrow topics. So empty post editing, multilingual SEO, AI content, QA. And I think in this case, depth really matters more than the breadth. Finally, almost finally, it's monitor your presence. So track how often and how accurately you get mentioned. And there are many tools for this by now. And leverage your clients. So named case studies with specific results, I think dramatically increase citation probability. So generic ones do little, I think, in this sense. I think there is a certain irony here. So our industry helps the world communicate clearly, but many of our own websites read like being written for in 2015 for human data skimming, not for AI parsing. So I think it's long, hero, vague statements. We deliver excellence or trusted by leaders. I think pages they try to say everything and end up saying little. I think the good news is that this is an opportunity. Tight, authoritative specialists can actually outperform the giants in AI answers. So it's a very democratic space. The model doesn't care about your size; it cares about your clarity. And so I think the specialists that move first will win because they have less to rewrite, so to speak. I think I want to stress this point. So AI is not a launch. It's not like a one-off. It's a loop. You don't ship it once and forget. I would say build a prompt set across the buyer journey. So measure how you show up, diagnose why if you don't, and then fix the assets the LLMs can extract. So then run it again. As Lee mentioned, the model is update constantly. So your competitors as well. So the buyer questions evolve. So your monitoring has to be continuous. I think monthly is the rough cadence I would recommend. So let's now go over these 4 steps with some more detail. I would say start by writing the questions your buyers are actually already asking. So I would aim for like a 20 to 30 prompts. And sounds like a lot, but it isn't. You can have AI generate the first draft and then refine. So ask your MS know what questions are being asked about your particular solutions or vertical, and they will give it to you. Number 2, cover the full journey. So which means early stage unbranded queries. How do life sciences companies localize IFUs? Or what is ISO 17100? And of course, do the same for the later stage queries, such as best TMS for software teams shipping weekly, or what should localization SLA include? And then around that, set monthly across the main tools like ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, and Gemini. And that's your baseline. I think there are 5 key metrics when it comes to AO, and I think they matter in this order. Number 1, recognition. Do you appear at all? If it's yes or no. Then it's a share of voice. When you do appear, how often versus your top competitors, which you can, of course, define. Then it's citations. So which sources are the models learning on, and are you among them? And then it's framing. So are you positioned as a specialist or a generalist? Are you seen as a premium, boutique, or low cost? Are you perceived as a global or regional or local provider? And this is how the model is implicitly summarizing you and who you are. And finally, the sentiment. So is the mention positive, neutral, or negative? The point is your website traffic might stay flat or even drop while your influence rises. And that's actually fine. It means that buyers are getting the answers in the AI and arriving at your site already pre-qualified. So it's all great. All right. I think this is the data from a published analysis of about 40,000 AI answers. And it really makes you rethink where you put your effort. Perplexity cites about 6.6 sources per answer, and it rewards authoritative content with named external sources. So this is genuine thought leadership territory. ChatGPT cites about 2.6 sources and is disproportionately influenced by community authority, which means Reddit, LinkedIn articles, professional forums. If you are invisible there, you're invisible largely in ChatGPT. Claude, I think, rewards clear positions and detailed analysis. Generic content gets little attention. And Google AI still has roughly 76% overlap with traditional ranking. So, of course, your existing SEO does carry over, but only into one of those platforms where buyers are now searching. So the takeaway is each platform rewards a different content profile. So one size fits all approach is not going to cut it, unfortunately. So when you are not getting cited, it's usually one of these three, or sometimes, of course, just because LLMs are probabilistic machines, they're not deterministic, and the same prompt twice can give different answers. But usually, it's the issues is one of these three. So number one, entity authority. So the web doesn't really know what you are. Your category and niche are fuzzy for them. Number two is source strategy. So you're absent from the trusted third-party sources the models lean on. So industry publications, analyst notes, associations. So really, guys like Nimdzi, CSA Slater, associations like GALA, they really have a big role to play because they are independent third-party systems, sites, or references which fit into the overall scheme of how AI models understand the world. So definitely be visible there. And finally, specificity. So it may be because your messaging is generic. So the model averages you out with the rest. Without a sharp position, you get quoted by no one. So I would say diagnose first, then fix. Don't just rewrite content blindly without this feedback. I think this is the most actionable slide of the module, in my view. LLMs don't read pages. They pull really chunks. So your content has to be readable in chunks. The not so great example on the left side is what most LSPs homepages might look like. So it's the good, the premier, the trusted. By the time you read the second sentence, the model has nothing to extract because it's really written for humans. I think the example on the right answers the question for us. So what we do, who for, certifications, a specific proof point. So 40 to 60 words. It's self-contained, and the model can lift this and cite it. So I would say use answer thread first openings, question style headings, Q&A blogs that stand alone. One-line takeaways with author, date, proof. I mean, these small structural things are really what makes a big difference in terms of AI search. Okay, quick run through what you can do. Tomorrow, you can run 5 unbranded prompts across the 4 AI platforms. You can audit your homepage hero content. Is there a citable 40 to 60 word chunk? Check entity consistency on LinkedIn, G2, Wikipedia, or similar. Next week, build the 20 to 30 prompt set. So save the baseline, rewrite these 3 top service pages, reverse engineer where competitors are getting cited from, and find the gaps here. So the sources, the third-party references. And next month, you can run one full build, measure, diagnose, fix loop. Pitch or publish original research to the third-party sites or sources, and refresh your G2 or Capterra listings if you have those with named clients, because that really helps. So I think this is the kind of work that doesn't make a splash, but definitely compounds over 3 to 6 months.
Okay, Libor, there's something missing from the previous slide. If you could show it again.
Sure.
Under next month, pitch original research to Slater, Multilingual Lindsay, and GALA. GALA is missing.
Of course, yes. Sorry, I'm so sorry, but I will edit for the next version. Yeah. Because of course you can publish also just press releases to GALA, and of course you can write content from GALA, and if all is public, it definitely helps your visibility in AI searches. Of course, things such as domain authority are huge, but having these third-party sources linking to your site with some relevant content, it's definitely a huge help for AI search. Well spotted. Thanks. Thanks. All right.
Okay.
Quick pause before I tackle the next topic. Anything urgent on AO before we move on? Any questions or any inputs from you, Lemis, Eric, before we move?
Sure. Jose added a really interesting comment. Like, I'm just pulling this from the chat, but based on GALA's barometer data, most language services companies don't even have a structured marketing team. How or strategy can we possibly survive without one? I actually think this is so good of a question, because I think what I have learned just in the last few years is that this is not that far out of reach. It is possible for smaller organizations, whether you're a unit within your organization or whether you're representing the entire company in any of the domains that we're talking about in this session. It's a lot, the barrier to entry is a lot lower than you think. And you might find that you can actually ask AI to teach you what you need to know how to move forward with the technical parts of it. So for example, one of my first journeys was I was trying to build a model for generating some marketing content for outbound marketing, and I didn't know how. So I actually just asked an AI to teach me, and in a matter of a few days, I was able to catch up. So it is far closer to reality. And I mean, okay, I just call out to GALA Academy. This content is also part of it. But I think what we're trying to help with is how to both have the confidence to try out and to take the first steps, but also the shape of the pathway ahead, not to fall into some of the big traps that are out there as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Eric. Is there anything else? Let me look at the chat window. Okay, perfect. So let's move forward in the interest of time. The next topic is probably the most hyped category these days, which means AI SDR or AI BDR. There is a lot of noise around this, and so let's try to separate the hype from the reality. But maybe we can do again a quick poll. Let's see, does your organization actually run a structured outbound or prospecting program? So of course, some of you will say no, and you've decided it doesn't make sense. Maybe you have tried it in the past and abandoned it, maybe considering it. So let's see if you have any outbound activity or team in place.
Okay, we're at 60%, a little bit more. Come on. Almost there.
Let's go for 100, yeah, Lisa, that's your benchmark.
Well, yes, it would be nice. Okay, we're not going forward until we go to 100, so everybody needs to vote.
I did.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm counting to 3. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, here we go.
No, that's very interesting. So, yes, so by and large, the activity is part of the sales job. If you have it in place, and there is some negative experience from the past, so this was abandoned, and definitely a sizable chunk also have a dedicated outbound team. So that's interesting. That's interesting. Perfect. So this should be really relevant. I had some fun with this slide. Imagine an end of term report card for the AI SDR. So great C plus trajectory, promising if he applies himself. The hype around autonomous SDRs has been massive for 2 years, I think. The numbers, when we actually look at them, tell a slightly different story. Reply rates are by and large mediocre. Qualification is often shallow. Meetings booked are noisy. The outreach is enthusiastic, but enthusiasm, of course, is not a strategy. So I'm not saying AI SDRs are useless. The fundamentals are there, but they are still a junior hire, I think, not a senior closer. And I would treat them accordingly. So coach them, review their work weekly, but don't fire your team and replace them with an agent because it doesn't make sense at all. So here's how I think about the AI prospecting engine. It sits at a marketing to sales handoff. It's not really a sales tool, and it's not really a marketing tool either. It's the bridge. And the idea is agents monitor signals, identify prospects, enrich them, and surface timely outreach triggers. So marketing feeds sales with warm, contextualized leads instead of sales doing code lists from scratch. That's the theory. I think the stack is well known by now. You can use Clay for enrichment. HubSpot has an AI prospecting agent. Perplexity or ChatGPT can do excellent account research. Apollo or LinkedIn Sales Navigator can do great intent help, or you can use Make or Zapier to wire it all together. So all you can use is, or you can use the built-in functionality that existing tools like HubSpot and for all of these specific functionalities. The execution is like a 5-step rollout. So you define your signals, you build the enrichment layer, you write personalization prompts per persona or connect it to the CRM with approved workflows, and then you iterate weekly. It sounds simple. The hard part is the discipline of doing it weekly and not just once. So what are the signals worth watching in our industry? I would say these are the seven moves which basically make a difference in my experience. Number one, it's leadership changes. So especially, head of localization, quality, CMO, head of content. New people mean new priorities, new preferences, and often new budgets. Then it's funding and M&A. So growth events trigger localization needs often. And the first 90 days or so post-close is your window. Next is job posting. So if a company is hiring a location manager or they are clearly building capability and someone has to support them. Then it's tech stack changes. So new CMS, so new e-commerce platform. So multilingual work usually follows. Then it's a content expansion. So new markets, multilingual job ads, new articles, all visible if you watch. Research intent. So companies actively searching topics relevant to you. So tools like Sixth Sense or Brambora. There is normally a predefined list of research topics, and it may be hard to pick those that make sense for us, but some do. And finally, visitor intent. So people are coming to a website. Companies showing up in specific sections is a strong and often underused signal. And this is the whole engine in 6 steps. So first, you define your ICP tightly, industry, company size, tech stack, geography, the trigger events that matter. Then you set up signal monitoring on your defined triggers. So those I described before. Then you auto-enrich the account when a signal fires. So if something happens, the system will pull contacts, provide the context, now recent news about the company, the contact, the industry. Then it generates the personalized outreach, which is now anchored to that specific signal. So if it's content, if it's new role, you define a different content prompt. And the outreach then it combines the external information about the account and the contacts with the information you already have in your CRM. So it's specific to the company and contact, and that's a real strength. Next, you have a human review checkpoint before anything goes out. So definitely, I wouldn't recommend doing anything autonomously. So really, semi-autonomous is the way to go these days. And then you sync everything into your CRM, which if replies routing to the right rep. So the whole thing should run continuously and not just when someone remembers to log in, so to speak. So what can you do tomorrow? So I would say list the top 3 signals that preceded your, for instance, best deals last year. Pull your last 10 outbound replies and identify the trigger that worked. Audit one slice of CRM data quality foundation first. Next week, you can write a one-page ICP document. You can, of course, use LLM to help define it. You can set up monitoring for one signal type only. You can start narrow, and then draft like a 3 persona-specific prompts which are anchored to that signal. And next month, you can build the 6-step workflow on I don't know, 50 to 100 named accounts. And then you can treat your AI as like your junior hire, which means weekly 30-minute review. And then track reply rate per signal, meeting set, source pipeline, the main metrics. And I think this is really the case where discipline beats the tool every time. All right. Maybe before we move to the last module, any immediate questions or any insights from you, Lemis or Eric?
I'll just chime in a little bit here to emphasize. If we could go back to the just the immediate slide here, the playbook here. I think there's two narratives here that we see, and I think this goes back up to the top of the introduction for the session about this seems like a lot when you look at it at this level. It feels like a lot of work, and I think each of us individually as potential practitioners are somewhere in the journey of this. Based on that first poll, we're kind of in the middle here with regards to some of the things that we've deployed. So I think one is don't over-index too much on thinking that you have to do all of this to get some value out of it. And the other is don't over-index thinking that this is going to answer all the problems in the world. I think that the reality is the trial and error and just getting into it and trying it is often a valuable place to start. But all of these things also go back to keeping the loop going with regards to what is it that you're trying to amplify? What's the loops that you're trying to feed, the virtuous cycles? So I think the signals is so important here. The top 3 buying signals that precede your best deals. That has nothing to do with AI. It has everything to do with understanding what kind of a business you are, or what kind of unit you are, or what kind of function you are. Like what's the signal you want to find? And that can then lead you to applying the AI in a meaningful way to either detect that signal or to action that signal. And ultimately, we'll be trying to make sure that we tie in the signal to the converting that into action. So hopefully that wasn't too obtuse, but the signal here is really important. The recognizing the journey and the sequence of steps in the journey of trying to deploy and build these things. Even if I feel like I could answer some of these questions in multiple ways. In some ways, I could say we're at the high level in certain things and a starter level in others, just because there's so many different ways of applying this capability. But I think this anchor here is speaking to that signal to action access that we're looking for. Lemis, do you have any thoughts?
I think you summed it up perfectly.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Ulrich, as always. Yeah, spot on. All right, so the last module, we have 20 minutes, so perfectly on time. So the infrastructure question. What does a sensible AI marketing tech stack looks like 2026 and what skills do you need around it. Maybe this is a good moment for the last quick poll. So if we take a honest look at your current marketing tech stack and your CRM, how does it look? Is it integrated with advanced AI and automation in place? Integrated but old school, just checking, and reporting, scattered, or basically if you plan to vibe code one tonight, fingers crossed as well.
Okay. Poll is open.
The last poll, I promise. I'm really curious to see what we end up seeing.
We're almost there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not everybody may have an answer for this
Of
because
course.
some of the folks on the call are not actually in a marketing team. But
Yes.
but if you did want to kind of map this over to your rough thinking about how you think about it, that would be fair too. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to close now. Okay, here are the results.
That makes a lot of sense. So, of course, most of us have something in place. It's either great or good or not great. And I want to talk to those 4% who really plan to vibe code their CRM tonight. Perfect. Okay, that's very encouraging. Perfect. So thanks. So the last module. So I think the big shift, in my view, is that the era of all-in-one platforms is basically over. I mean, for years, the message was consolidate one platform to rule them all, so to speak. But that logic doesn't hold so much anymore, I think. Today, the winning model is a modular stack. So one tool or one agent per job, all connected through a central CRM that serves as the source of truth. Of course, the tools can change every 6 months, but the CRM is the spine that stays. This is almost like what's happening in the language tech space, I think. I think this is liberating because you don't have to commit to a mega platform for marketing that doesn't do such a great job. I mean, I won't name any names, but you can pick the best tool for each job and swap it when something better appears. That's really, I think, the way to go these days. If you've ever seen this famous Martech 5000 or more like 14,000 by now, you know how complicated this space has become. And I won't pretend to navigate it for you slide by slide. But the point of this slide is that it's visual. So it's overwhelming, it's fragmented, and yes, you do need a strategy to cut through it. So let's look at one. I think this is one possible AI marketing stack for an LSP. So 6 categories, three picks each. These are the tools that we and many of our peers actually use, so not a theory. For strategy and research, Perplexity for web research is great. Claude for reasoning and writing. ChatGPT is the usual general workhorse stuff. For content creation, again, you can use GPT or Claude plus Jasper or Writer. If you need a more advanced brand voice management or Descript for video and audio, so there are many tools in this category. CRM prospecting, I would say HubSpot is the best spine. Clay for enrichment. Of course, you can also use the enrichment in HubSpot through their Clearbit acquisition. Apollo and LinkedIn Sales Navigator for intent and contact data. So that's usual setup. For agent orchestration, you can use the built-in features of your CRM or use something like a Make or Zapier for more advanced use. AEO and search, of course, the traditional tools like SEMrush or Ahrefs still do a good job. You can use, others specific to AEO like AirOps, for instance. And for analytics, I would say HubSpot Analytics is great if you use HubSpot. You can use GA4 with some Looker Studio connection. And of course, you can increasingly connect LLMs to your CRM to get excellent reporting and research capabilities. So definitely that's something I would encourage everybody to to do. And of course, this isn't the only valid stack, but it's a working one. So still, whatever is useful for you. Here is a quick counterpoint. So because let's be honest, AI is not the answer to everything. A lot of what marketing does daily, like life cycle automation, scheduled emails, lead routing, scoring dashboards, this can all be perfectly well handled by the existing automation capabilities in your CRM. You don't need to inject LLM into every workflow. Sometimes the good old way is the better way, the faster, cheaper, more reliable. I would say start with outcomes, not tools, and then pick the right tool for the job. Sometimes the right tool isn't AI. Sometimes it is, but not always. Here's how I would think about what to automate and how. So the now rows are no-brainers. So content, brief generation, social variations from long form, email nurture, personalization, lead enrichment. So all of these things have mature tooling and clear ROI. So I would just do them. The careful row is client relationship nurturing. So you can absolutely automate the schedule, the cadence, the reminders, but the actual message has to feel human because clients can smell automation a mile off, like all of us. And the never row, brand strategy and positioning. This is still mostly human work. Don't delegate it fully to AI. The day you let an LLM define your positioning is the day you start sounding like everyone else, I think. So that's definitely dangerous. And this is the frame I found useful. So whether you're a one-person marketing team or 50, the work breaks down into roughly these 8 roles. Of course, they are not all FTEs. Often, one person has 3 or 4 or 8 heads. But definitely these all matter. So somebody like a prompt strategist. So somebody who maintains the shared library and trains the team. That's really important. Then it's agent ops manager. So somebody who governs the fleet of agents, if you have, of course, any agents, across the whole marketing tech stack. That's definitely something which requires some rigor and some time. AEO specialist. So somebody like a content specialist who thinks in systems, not individual pieces. Somebody to look after the creative side, so the quality gate, data and AI analyst, somebody who can crunch the numbers and connect the pipeline to revenue. That's definitely important. Marketing operations, so somebody, the traditional, ref ops engineer, doing the CRM architecture and lifecycle management. And of course, industry intelligence. So somebody who is plugged into GALA, ISA, and others like Slater, NIMSI, and CSA. So somebody who can connect you with the external world. And if you map your team to this, you will see the gaps quickly. So if I had to boil this whole course down to 2 words, it would be this, experimentation. So, I mean, at this moment, there is no playbook, despite what every LinkedIn guru might claim. You all learn by doing, by failing, by trying again. It's like learning to drive. You have to put the kilometers or miles in. You can't read your way there. And the second word is execution. So we all know what we should be doing. The hard part is always doing it amid the chaos of real work. Too many fires, too many priorities, but there'll never be a perfect time. So now I think is the best time to start or the best time to get better. In 2 simple words, but definitely hardest 2 things to actually live by. Building on the previous slide, so everyone has access to the same AI tools these days. The advantage is not so much in what you know, it's in how fast you execute and how systematically you learn. I would say ship before you're perfect. Run experiments with good enough prompts. The learning is really in the results, not in the setup. Next, build a test log. Write down every experiment, hypothesis, prompt, result, learning. This becomes your AI playbook and yours, not borrowed. Weekly iterations. So pick one workflow each week. Doesn't make sense to overdo it. Add AI, measure, improve, or kill it. That happens as well. And then share inside out, which means turn your internal experiments into external content. your learnings are your thought leadership. This is where AEO and content marketing definitely meet. I think the living document is the asset. Build that, and the rest follows. Final next steps slide. What can you do? So tomorrow, connect your CRM to an LLM, web connectors, or MCP server, or even better, do it right now. Take stock of your paid or even free tools. Are they used weekly, monthly? Are they dormant? Be honest. If dormant, remove them. Pick one now, row from the automation playbook to build. Next week, map your full stack to the 6 categories. Find duplicates and gaps. Review the built-in automation tools you already are paying for. You'll be surprised maybe how much you're already not using, and start a test log. Next month, build one end-to-end orchestration. Prove it before scaling. Quarterly stack review. Kill one or two tools you don't need or use, and then redirect your budget elsewhere, and publish your first inside-out piece. I think that's the playbook for the next 6 to 8 months. All right, this is your turn. We've covered a lot, 6 modules, lots of ideas, lots of frameworks, lots of next steps. What's on your mind? Of course, Lemis, Eric, you can jump in on anything that crosses into the sales or growth territories. But thanks for your attention so far.
If anyone has questions, you can raise your hand and we can open your microphone. Or if you prefer, you can just write your question in the chat, whatever more comfortable for you guys.
I'll open up here. Well, if anybody wants to raise their hands, like we'd love to hear from you and love to get your input. But one of the things I love about this situation isn't so much that I believe that AI is the best solution for everything. I'm kind of it does do some amazing things, and it's dangerous in some ways. Like, all of that is true. But what I love about this is it's giving us an opportunity to ask better questions about what it is, what are we trying to do. So if you look at the question of intent, like experimentation, what are you trying to experiment? What are you trying to do? You have to ask yourself that question. What am I trying to do? What am I trying to be very good at? What am I trying to achieve? What are my growth goals? What are my sales goals? How can I make my company or my team work better? Then you ask, what are the things that I'm actually doing? And so as Libor left us off, is like, what are the tools that you currently have? You might have some legacy stuff in there that isn't adding any value. Why isn't it adding any value? That's kind of an important question to ask, but it's also important of what is the value that you're trying to build. And then are there ways that you can get there faster or better in different kind of channels? So the ask better questions is the essential sort of story of the whole thing. So we have, let's see, do we have any questions? Great feedback. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
There were a couple of questions in the chat. So Chavi was asking, what is the ideal size of marketing team to handle all this? How many people? And then there's a question from Steve. Is outbound email the only channel people see working today? I don't know who wants to answer the questions.
I'm going to jump in on Libor's question because he's an actual marketing guy, but I'm going to step on his toes here a little bit to say the ideal marketing team depends on who you are, because with one person you can do some amazing things. And in some cases, you might need a very large team. So it all depends on how active you are, who your target ICP is, how you want to position yourself in the market, how aggressively you have to move to reach these audiences. And some of the marketing stuff here is really a B2C versus a B2B model. So there are different kind of strategies with this. But I think the lessons here are that the team size may not be as important as the right size for your use case. And the role of AI is different depending on the different activities of that marketing team, which we remember one of the slides earlier on in the process was talking about the AI opportunity with these different activities. The team size and the use of AI and the targets that you're trying to reach vary tremendously based on your intent. right? So Libor, would you agree as a representative sample of that demographic?
I always agree with you, Eric. So definitely, I do agree here as well. And I would say the size really depends on your ambitions. So basically, what are your goals? So is growth your main goal? Of course, then marketing should be the leader, the bridge, yeah, to the future. If your main strategy basically is to protect your existing, revenue or existing business, of course, it's more like defensive, yeah, strategy. So of course, you can have a small team, but I think the AI advantage is that you can be a small team but very mighty, these days. So you don't have to build a huge team, with specialists for every area, online events and whatever. So you can really use AI to maximize your bandwidth and your experience and do amazing things, even if your team is not as big as you would like to have it.
Okay. How about the other question? Is outbound email the only channel people see working today?
Definitely not. I mean, definitely not. Definitely not. Of course, maybe Lemis, you have a better answer, but definitely outbound email is only one of the options, not the most promising ones in general, I think.
Okay, that's another question. What is the best way to define a good enough prompt without becoming too much of a perfectionist, which slows down the experimenting part? Anyone? No? I'm going to call on Jose.
No, I
Yeah,
can
go
answer
ahead.
this. So I think you can follow some basic guidelines here. So definitely, I'm not a prompt engineer myself either, but I think following, let's say, for instance, this trace framework. So does the prompt give you the specific task, request, action, context, and evaluation? So basically, if you whatever. So basically, more definitions, but basically just to have in mind the basic framework, what constitutes a good prompt. Otherwise, everything else is practice. Yeah, I mean, it's not our main profession, but definitely it's good to have some skill in doing prompting. Yeah.
Okay. There's a question again from Arup. What are the top 3 AI tools for prospecting? Do we need to take subscriptions for all the AI tools for different marketing activities?
I think you can start small and grow from there. So I think, for instance, you can have all these prospecting functions built into HubSpot. So you can use it for contact management, for one-to-one slash emails, for email automation. You also have the enrichment built in. Of course, it's based on credits, so you have to pay for it a little bit more, but definitely it makes sense. And also, HubSpot would have the buyer's intent. Yes, so the public external data about contacts and companies. So what they research, what's happening in their world, the signals. So I think you can start small and go from there. And definitely, I wouldn't pay for too many things, just to pay for one. And if it works, stick to it.
Yeah. And let's take a final question from Ahmed. Is the era of classic outbound reach gone? Is the classic email drip campaigns gone?
Those are channels, not methods. So the AI is a method, not a channel. So I think even though you might see more and more people trying to find sort of prospective companies via, like, if I might be in the if I want to go buy something, I might go to AI first and say, what toaster do you recommend? What are the best, tell me how to get to that. So you do need to think about this channel, but that doesn't make the other channels go away. And I think that keep in mind too, that this economy is largely an attention economy. So we're trying to get the attention of our target audience. So the answer totally depends on who your ICP is. And how to reach them. So if you're only in passive mode and only serving your content to an AI search channel, which is an important and growing branch, like we have to be aware of that people are searching via AI now instead of via chatbot instead of kind of via these traditional channels. But it doesn't take away from the fact that your ICP may not do that. They may be looking very differently at the way that they engage with their supplier base. I'm mainly functioning in that axis here from a marketing perspective. Anyway, that's my 2 cents here. I think it's just another layer in both channel. I mean, there is that AI channel, we talked about that, but there's also the method of how do you make these other systems more efficient in finding signal better. There isn't really an everything or nothing kind of answer to this.
Okay, I think we reached the end of this session. Thank you so much, Libor, presenting for the first time at GALA.
I think so.
So well done.
Thank you.
Very well done. Congratulations. And thank you, Eric and Lemise, for joining the conversation. Thank you, everybody, for attending the session and asking questions. We'll see you next week. Remember, you use the same link of today to log into next week's sessions. The recording will be available tomorrow at the latest, and I'll put a message in Basecamp. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day or a good evening, depending on where you are. See you next week. Bye.
Thanks for your time, everybody. Have a good rest of the day. Thanks a lot.